Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Those of you logged on to the program on the website, www.gbn.gd. And of course, those of you listening on Classic 105.5, 105.9, Hot 98.5, 98.7. This morning, we started the discussion on the national address by Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, which was broadcast last night across all the major platforms, in which he highlighted a number of things that will be taking place effective today. One of the things that he highlighted was that every day will be a business day from the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. However, the daily curfew remains in place from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. As highlighted by Minister Oliver Joseph during Good Morning Grenada this morning, that applies to all businesses, all days of the week, I should say. Sunday to Saturday could be deemed a business day, and it is up to each business if and when it wants to operate, as well as the times that it wants to operate, as long as it stays within the regulations, which is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I am expecting to be joined by Chartered Accountant Henry Joseph of PKF Accounting to further delve into the economic side of the presentation by the Prime Minister last night. Part of what he said last night was that the expected economic impact of Grenada's economy because of COVID-19 and a number of the things that are taking place that will affect the economy, and we will be speaking with Mr. Joseph in relation to that. I'm just waiting on him to finish setting up so that he can join the discussions. While we do that, I think I could open the phone lines very briefly, just to ensure that the program continues while Mr. Joseph sets up his equipment, joining us virtually. So in the meantime, we're just going to open the phone lines. We are speaking to the Prime Minister's national address, which was broadcast last night. 435-2041 is the number to call and share your thoughts on what was highlighted in the presentation, in the speech. You can also share your thoughts on the GBN Television Facebook page or the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. You can also pose your comments, questions, queries, concerns in relation to the Prime Minister's address on the WhatsApp. It's also 435-2041, but please only written messages, no voice or video messages on the WhatsApp, only written messages, please. Good morning. Okay, that person panic. 435-2041 is the number to call and contribute while we wait Mr. Joseph to join us. You can also pose your questions. Let me refresh the Facebook page. You can pose your questions on the GBN Television Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, and on the WhatsApp. Or you can call the landline 435-2041. Good morning. Morning.
Well, I would just like to make a quick, I don't have a problem with the opening up the business, that's a good thing. But what about the water system? I find now it's a plain gas now, man.
All right, you see, if you want to call the radio station, you got to be respectful. Look at that. You lost your chance to tell Nawasa where you're located and the water that you need. 435, if you can't be respectful, I'll be cutting you off. No chance, no dilly-dallying this morning. All right, let me take this phone call. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning, Blossom.
Morning.
Just one concern. I'm not sure if I heard well last night. What about transportation? When businesses are opened, how do people get to the businesses? How would the workers get there?
Thank you very much. As highlighted by the minister this morning, it is the onus is on the businesses to get their workers to and from their jobs. They are still working out of finalizing and tweaking the arrangements with public transportation, but the businesses that are opened before then would need to make arrangements to transport their workers to and from their jobs. And with that, Mr. Joseph has joined us. Mr. Joseph, you're hearing me now. I am seeing you at the moment, actually. Just while he settles in. Yes, okay, so he's ready now. Mr. Joseph, yes, we can see you. Good morning, Mr. Joseph.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Nice.
And I could hear you now.
Nice to know. Thank you very much for joining us as we delve deeper into the economic side of the Prime Minister's address last evening. Thank you again.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Before we delve into specifics, just your overall thoughts on what has been highlighted by the Prime Minister, our economic situation here in Grenada in these COVIDious times, as I put it.
Well, I really like that term, COVIDious times. Well, I think the Prime Minister, if I should sum it up, he tried to give hope. Right? I think that was the main focus of his speech, because he's saying he will help the farmers and he will help, businessmen, etc., etc. Economically, I still believe we have a long way to go. Because we rely a lot on tourism. And notwithstanding the fact that he indicated that the borders should be reopened again by June 1 or in early June, that is certainly going to pose a big challenge. But we have to be aware what's happening in North America and Europe. There is still a lot of illness, as it were, out there. So I cannot, from where I sit, envisage too much of traveling between those countries and anywhere. And the majority of our tourists comes, from Europe, with a smaller amount from the United States. So we are going to be seriously challenged for a while.
In terms of the economic impact, Grenada, I guess like the rest of the world, would definitely been hit hard because of COVID-19. The status of our present economy, I know you may not have the specific numbers, but the status of the economy and where we are at now, your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, if you listen to what the Prime Minister said, the amount of income we received in April was less by 30 million than the previous year. I didn't get exactly what percentage decline it was, but 30 million in my view is considerable. It is no doubt that May is going to be as bad, and certainly June. We also have to be aware, and he said that last night, St. George's University is closed and may not reopen until August, when the new semester is going to start. They contribute 20% of our GDP, right? He said 20%. Our GDP is about $1.2 billion. So 20% of that is a considerable amount. So it's in my view, our economy is going to be hard hit. One, because of the downturn or almost non-existence, as it were, of tourism. And the fact that St. George's University is not operating for another couple of months is going to make it as bad. So we do have some real issues facing us. I know that some loans have been negotiated, but when you are dealing with places like the World Bank and the IMF, and so they take a while before they start disbursing loans. And of course, a lot of this has already been earmarked. So when these loans are ultimately received, the impact on the economy would not quite be what we want, because by then we would slowly be recovering. Because I do expect that by October, the tourism industry should start to revive, as it were. And, a number of things should be in place. But we have to hope and pray.
How long do you think it will likely take for Grenada's economy to bounce back from the economic impact of COVID-19?
Oh, no. Well, as I indicated, one, you need the St. George's University to reopen, all right? So that once they come back, our GDP is going to be on the upswing because, as I indicated, they contribute about 20% of our GDP. And if you have new students, because it's a new semester, you have new students coming in, I don't know if the numbers are going to increase. Then that is the first sign that you're going to see some economic activity happening. I mean, all those apartments that are now empty, they're going to be rented again. The supermarkets are going to experience, a lot of outflow, as it were. The tourism sector, unfortunately, July, August, September is usually the slow time of the year. So you wouldn't see much happening there. You see, my own view is that we really need to diversify our economy. The dependence on tourism is just too much at this point in time. So we really, really need to diversify. It's not going to be an easy task. It's quite simple to say, diversify. I know it's going to be a big challenge, but that's what we have to work towards, diversification.
With the impact of the absence of the tourism sector and the absence of SGU, if you had to put it on a scale, 1 being good, 10 being severe, how would you rate Grenada as a faring in terms of the economic shock brought on by COVID-19?
Oh, it's going to be tremendous. I would say it would be severe.
So 10?
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah. No, one have to be realistic. The facts are that, tourism is a big contributor. SGU as much as, so that the next couple of months are going to be very challenging for us, very, very challenging. Don't forget, we also depend a lot on remittances, right? The United States is extremely hard hit. I mean, if you listen, to the news, in fact, I think they're almost up to 1.5 million people who have contracted the disease, and I think about 80,000, deaths. And of course, that's what we are aware of. There could be lots of people who are not, going to work. They have not necessarily tried to go out and say, look, we think we are coming down, with this thing. So that the remittances are going to be much smaller, for a while. In fact, one economist in the United States said that it's the worst recession that the United States is experiencing for the last, say, 150 years. So if it is that bad there, what would happen to the rest of the world? Because, the United States, they lead. In Europe, the story is very much the same. We have lots of nationals out there in the United Kingdom, and these people, they spend money because some of them have houses here. They like to come back and, and visit their relatives, etc. So that we are going to be affected. We are going to be affected, very, very badly. We have now to start a plan as to what we are going to do to try to take care of this matter.
With the easement of regulations announced by the government over the past few weeks, we've seen the reopening of businesses slowly but surely. How much of an impact do you think the businesses that are currently opened would have in terms of restarting Grenada's economy?
Well, what it will do is it would take care to an extent of the unemployment situation. For example, I heard only a couple of days ago that the airport had to send home 150 people. I guess in the tourism sector, it's probably 1,000 people home, and then all these businesses that depend on the tourism industry. So, in terms of unemployment, it's going to be hard for quite a while yet.
There are some that are saying more businesses should open. Considering our economic situation compared to the need to be cautious in terms of keeping the nation healthy, how quickly do you think the government needs to move to ensure that the economy picks up some speed and not just move at a snail's pace? Because there are different factors that would determine how much of a lifting of the regulations we would have.
Well, I subscribe to the view health before wealth. Right? So that the cautious nature of reopening businesses, I am very much on the side of the government. But the last thing you want to see is COVID-19 spreading in the community, right? So, yes, be cautious, take your time. The United States, for example, is talking about a second wave. That second wave would come about because of reopening of the economy, right? If Grenada, who, as far as I'm concerned, has been relatively successful, if they were to reopen the whole economy too quickly, right, you could have problems. The matter of social distancing and wearing masks and washing your hands and that kind of thing, that have to continue almost indefinitely. See, one of the things that helps the economy quite a bit is the reopening of schools, right? Because once schools are operational, you find quite a lot of economic activity. In fact, the banking industry will tell you when schools are in process, I mean, the whole financial sector anyway, when schools are in process, there is quite a bit of activity in the economy. I don't know precisely what the Ministry of Education have in mind, but I do not envisage that schools will operate for this term at all, right? CXC and so have said that the exams are now going to be in July. That's the end of the term, right? Now, for kindergarten and those kind of classes, I can't see them going back to school. So it has to be September. So, those things are going to have an impact on what happens in the economy. Business opening, but other people to buy. You see, because people may not have the disposable income. The first thing man have to think about is our food, right? Here thinking about going and spend money on clothes or on furniture and that kind of thing. First thing you want is food, right? So whatever money you have, you're going to spend it on food. And let me tell you something. Having children at home, they eating you out of everything you could think about because every minute they're going into the refrigerator. So parents don't want to say, no, you can't do that. They have to make sure their children are looked after. So, reopening, yes, we want it. It's going to help. But for the time being, I would say health before wealth. That have to be the watchword.
Nice. Let's take a break and then we'll continue the discussion afterwards. This is To The Point. We're speaking with Chartered Accountant Henry Joseph in relation to the Prime Minister's address broadcast last night. We'll be right back.
The NIS is committed to your well-being and continues to provide the same excellent service to you from the safety of your home or office. Therefore, from April 2020, all remittances must be submitted electronically to nisremit@nisgrenada.org. The e-remittance template can be downloaded from our website at www.nisremit.org. nisgrenada.org/e-submission. Alternatively, you can provide us with your email address and the required Excel spreadsheet will be sent to you. Call 440-3309 or chat with us on social media for more information. NIS, serving you because we care.
You know, one day I woke up and, you know, they painted a set of pedestrian crossing all along the streets. You know, nobody told us how to use that thing properly.
I know how.
You're serious?
Every safe, good driver knows about these things. As a driver, you have to be very attentive. You know you're coming up close to a pedestrian cross, you start slowing down immediately, looking to see if there's any pedestrian on the side getting ready to cross. If there is, you stop on the line that is a certain distance before the crosswalk. Then you would see the pedestrian put their hands out, looking directly at you, indicating that they are going to cross. And only when you have come to a complete stop, that is when they will quickly and safely cross to the other side. And then you continue happily on your journey.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact, wait for pedestrian to cross. Then you happily continue on your journey.
This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Feel good tax. Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with Chartered Accountant Henry Joseph, and we're looking deeper into the Prime Minister's address broadcast last night. Mr. Joseph, I wanted to ask as well, and you mentioned it, that Grenada's economy is heavily dependent on tourism. But some people are saying that this crisis has taught us that agriculture should be the focus, or given priority over tourism possibly, or maybe on the same wavelength. Do you share those thoughts?
I would say you need to rejuvenate, as it were, the agricultural sector. I would not put it on the same level as tourism. The two are a little different, right? But I do believe that we need to give much more emphasis to agriculture than what we're giving now. And agriculture does not mean the cocoa and the nutmeg and the bananas, you know. We need the whole spectrum, right? From the rearing of animals, poultry farming, short crops and that kind of thing. We need, you know, definitely to give it some much more serious thought. We need to limit importation, because if you are encouraging people to go into agriculture. I know there's certain protocols you need to adhere to. For example, I don't think you could just stop the importation of chicken. I don't remember the details, but I think there's some agreement within Europe and CARICOM where you cannot restrict, certain things from coming in. But certainly we need to give emphasis, try our own local production and improve it. At the moment, not enough is being done.
One of the things, before I open the phone lines, one of the things you highlighted this morning was they need to start planning now for what needs to take place to revitalize the economy. What are some of the things you suggest needs to take place, that needs to be done by government, put in place by officials, maybe even as wide as the region, to reboost or to rejuvenate the economy?
It is not an easy task.
True.
Because at the moment we rely to a very large extent on tourism, right? I also heard the Prime Minister spoke about I would put it simply, most people don't like that term, the sale of passports, okay? Because that's what it comes down to in the end. This is one I do not subscribe to, period, right? Yes, a lot of countries are doing it, and there's some that are not doing it. I am on the side of those that are not doing it. I believe, however, that yes, we need to start planning now. And as I said, I heard last night that we're soon going to have construction starting of a 500-room hotel in the vicinity of, probably what used to be the old Santa Maria Hotel and that general area, because that is what I understand, Mount Cinnamon, that's some of the things that they own. But we don't want the long gestation period that we normally see with some projects. Because, some of these investors will say to you, right, I'm going to be building a hotel, but they are waiting until they have all the concessions, that are practical. Then in a number of cases, they have to go and look for money. And, these things take a long time. So we need, as it were, to give them a nudge, right? So yes, so we're going to have some more hotel rooms, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But we need to start planning now what we can do with our agricultural sector, right? As I said, we need to give it quite a bit of emphasis. I believe that there is a new chicken farm that has started. I'm not sure if they're going for eggs or if they're going for poultry or whatever. That too needs to be given a boost. I don't know if they need any assistance. I think it's a lot of, private sector investment there. But is that enough? I think we need one or two more. For example, KFCs and these kind of restaurants, they import a lot of chicken, all right? We have to try to be able to produce enough locally so we can supply to them, because they want a reliable supply. That's one of the reasons why they import, because they are guaranteed that they can bring in chicken once every 2 weeks or once every month, right? And there would be enough. So we need to have enough production locally to be able to supply them. We need to go into, for example, cattle rearing. Because as I understand it, we still bring in cows and so from St. Vincent. We need to have, some of that here. Because there is a lot of unoccupied land in Grenada. We don't need to go back to the old days where you have to go and cut grass to be able to feed the cattle and that kind of thing. We have Caribbean Agro. They are manufacturing things. I heard somebody say this morning, if we start planting corn and that kind of thing, we can use it as animal feed. So we have to encourage people. But of course, people want to know that there is a guaranteed market, that at the end of the day, they can make a reasonable living from doing those kind of things. So we have to start to plan do some, budgeting, etc., and be able to prove to people that, look, if you went into the farming of corn, for example, it takes 6 weeks for corn to mature, right? At the most 2 months. In that time, show them that they can make a profit. So if you can make a profit of, say, $10,000 in 2 months, that's a fair amount of money, That is, $5,000 a month in income. Not many people in Grenada make $5,000 a month. So prove to them it's not backbreaking, that it could be profitable, and it's something where you have a market that would be consistent. And once we could do that. So that kind of planning, have to start now convincing people that, look, you're not wasting your time. It won't be something where all you're doing is just making a few cents to be able to buy food. You want to do better than that. You want to be able, when you do that, you could build a house, buy a motor vehicle, you could probably go on vacation, because those are the things that people enjoy in life, right? So once you can prove to them that by doing X, Y, Z, they would be able to enjoy the things in life, then they'll do it.
Out of curiosity, how much does the construction industry contribute to the GDP?
I don't have the exact numbers, but construction is certainly something that drives the economy in a large way. They create a lot of jobs. Granted, they're not permanent jobs. Because if you are building a house, for example, it might take 6 to 8 months. And except you are doing that on a continuous basis. You see, a construction job doesn't last forever. Infinitum, as we said, once you get a job, you want to make sure, boy, I could be there for 10, 20 years, but 6 months, 8 months. But, construction is great. Construction is a very important aspect of an economy. When there is construction going on, there's a lot of activity. I mean, the guys there, they make good money these days in construction, and they spend it. So, for example, the announcement that construction is soon to resume is an extremely good thing. A couple of months ago, I went down to one of the development, places on the island, and I was shocked to see at least 15 homes being constructed, in a small area. So, that could be good. The amount of jobs that could be on 15 homes, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we need construction. It is an important, pillar of the economy.
All right. At this point, we're going to open the phone lines, 435-2041. We are speaking about the address by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell yesterday, specifically as it relates to the economy. 435-2041. You can also message us on the WhatsApp, only written messages, or post your questions, queries, comments, concerns on the GBN Television Facebook page or the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Good morning.
Good morning. The Prime Minister did not caution the service industry. I'm speaking of domestic workers, busmen, truckmen, etc. And the service industry will be hit tremendously hard, and they need to know that, and they need to be cautioned. They are the sector that is going to maybe suffer the most. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thoughts, Mr. Joseph?
Just to say to this caller that the Prime Minister did say that the transportation industry is having meetings with them, and pretty soon he would be able to make an announcement. So once public transportation becomes easily available, I'm certain that people like the domestic workers would be able to get back to work.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Blossom and dear followers, and good morning, Mr. Joseph. I'm not as optimistic as you are in terms of tourism and the SGU. Frankly, I cannot see. I know they're working on protocols. Us accepting thousands of students from the United States mainly to be in classes of hundreds and setting of the SGU before January next year. They may be able to start in a small scale. August to me is very, very close. So I would be, I think we have to manage our expectation in that regard. In the area of tourism, Barbados didn't close the borders, but the tourists just stopped coming. And when the tourists stopped coming, the airlines stopped flying. Many of the value chain that feeds tourism, they are under stress. Airlines may go under, tour companies may go under, and the most important thing that drives travel is consumer confidence. People have to feel confident that when they go on a plane, they're not going to get a disease. Nobody's spending money to get sick. And when they get to a country, they will be safe and the health will be guaranteed. So I don't see people getting on aircrafts and traveling to other parts of the world in droves again till probably the middle of next year. So those two sectors, I mean, the education one, probably by January next year, the tourism and travel, I see it as further down the road if the airlines and the other companies survive. So I think that we are stuck here with what we fail to do in terms of developing a more resilient economy, especially agriculture and other things like that. One concern I have locally right now is the matter of public transport, and I've been saying it for months. We did not have to wait till lockdown to put in place protocols for public transport. It's necessary. There's no point opening businesses and telling people they can go to work and they cannot get to work and they can go into shop. We've spent 2 months have passed. We're getting out of the lockdown and we still don't have the protocol for public transport.
Okay.
And this to me is a major, major flaw. We bought extra time. We squandered the time. We have to open public transport and find an acceptable and safe protocol.
Thank you.
This is lacking. Disappointing. Very disappointed.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Joseph? Sorry, say that again?
Okay, it's improved a bit. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, yeah.
Yes,
well,
go ahead.
I understand what the caller is saying. Public transport, I think that's key. We need to get that moving as fast as we can. I'm not that pessimistic as far as SGU is concerned, because let's face it. I mean, they started as a medical school. They have lots of facilities there. They wouldn't reopen except they are absolutely certain. And if they themselves have said by August, it means that they would put the necessary protocols in place so that I see no reason why the school should not be able to reopen by August. Tourism is much more of a challenge. I agree that the airlines are under tremendous pressure at the moment. But the United States is pumping billions of dollars into the airline industry. So that's going to help. They wouldn't all go under. I believe the bigger ones are certainly going to survive, and soon they would be back again. So I think tourism, it wouldn't be next year. So I believe it would be sometime during the course of the current year. But we've got to wait and see. All that we're saying is pure speculation, of course, because we don't know for sure.
Someone is asking if you can shed a light on what is referred to as a credit store.
When I heard that last night, that's the first time I heard the term. But it's a store because all stores, in my view, extend credit. All. So that means, that all the stores in town, but I don't give instructions, but it's my interpretation, right, that a credit store is any retail outlets that extends, credit, to the general public. And as far as I know, all stores in town. Although I have a fair idea what they're talking about, right? But I can't say that for fact, okay? So I could only interpret it in the way that, I think it is.
Okay. The Prime Minister also highlighted in the speech that they have sought help from various financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, Government of India, the European Union, the ECCB, Caribbean Development Bank, among others. This approach is a good thing or a bad thing, or indifferent?
Okay, let's start with the IMF and the World Bank. The World Bank came into being not to be able to distribute money to distressed people. The World Bank is a bank, right? Any money the World Bank gives you, it is a loan, basically. Granted, the loan would be on very easy terms, probably 1% interest, repayment period, starting 40 years from now, and that kind of thing, because they are a bank. That's how they came into being, right? They are bankers of the world, right? Most countries that are members, you could get dividends when you are a member, but you would get dividends based on your participation in the World Bank, okay? So that anything we get from the World Bank, right, 10 to 1, it is a loan that has to be repaid. Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, for example, it's owned by the governments of the EC countries. What they can give you is some dividends, which you don't have to repay, but that's not a considerable amount because the ECCB is a small bank, right? I think they have something called drawing rights, right? So you can get, some money from out of that, but it's not a considerable amount. What we are looking for basically is to get more grants, right? But with all countries under tremendous pressure, I'm not sure how much of that is available, right? But whatever we can get, for the time being, unfortunately, taxpayers would have to be aware that 15, 20 years from now, they will have additional loans to repay, but we need it because we need it to give the economy a boost.
Okay, let's go back to the phone. Okay, we seem to have lost that caller. There was a question as it relates to... I'm looking for it. Hold on. Let me make sure I could find it. Let me take that caller while I look for the question. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, Citizen Welsh. Greetings and greetings to Mr. Joseph, your guest here. Listen, two things, Mr. Joseph. I fully agree with you about giving people hope and so on and creating a condition or state of optimism. That's great. But let me touch on this one first, just a comment on it. As it relates to the development of agriculture and its ancillary activities, I repeat that. Agriculture is not just planting and reaping from the ground. There are a lot of ancillary activities around agriculture which we need to develop. And I hope that we pay attention to it. But here is one of the things that he didn't mention was that of how we will deal with predial larceny, where the farmers go into the place and they work hard and people just walk in and thief it afterwards. Would you share the view, Mr. Joseph, that it is essential that we really create some draconian laws against predial larceny and also the establishment of what I call a PALCO, a penal agricultural labor colony for all those who feel they can teach farmers things to go and learn to work agriculture. But finally, this one has to do with a word which I'd like to introduce. I haven't heard it in the so-called Prime Minister's conversation last night with the country, nor in yours this morning. Conditionality. All that we look forward into the future has to be based on what happens. If something happens now, then something else will happen. If something were to happen, something else would, should, or could happen, etc., etc. And it goes on that if something had happened, then certain other things would have happened. This would be at the final stages of things. But tell me, what does conditionality have to do as with this situation and the development of the country as we move forward. I hope you understand my question, sir. Have a nice day, will you, Citizen Welsh?
Thank you, Citizen Rollo. You do the same. Go ahead, Mr. Joseph.
Oh, well, the caller and predial larceny, I know that has always been a problem. I don't, however, subscribe to draconian. I believe, yes, steps have to be taken to reduce it. Well, not only reduce, to wipe it out totally. So our legal system would have to be better organized. So, people who persist in stealing what doesn't belong to them would have to be penalized, of course. So the court system, we should, because I noticed these days we're using a lot of drones. So, that could help in identifying, those people who feel that they could just, walk in and take what they want that, don't belong to them. So, you could identify them in that way. So in a number of ways, yes, we certainly need to ensure that predial, larceny is kept, to a minimum. And the caller has this point about conditionality. Everything is predicated on what may happen and what may not happen. I mean, you couldn't plan and be certain that X is going to be the result. It is conditional on certain things taking place. So tell him the term conditionality is implied in almost everything you do.
There is a question on the WhatsApp. A statement. The Grenadian economy has been in intensive care since 2013. That is why we are in such a terrible state now. No economy can survive with such high taxes and low production. Is it true that the so-called growth never existed?
I mean, I would be extremely bold to go and say that the growth never existed. You just have to look at what happens with the GDP. Because if your GDP was, say, 900 million, and you have growth of, say, 5%, then it means your GDP would be 950 million, okay? It's at the stage where it is 1.2 billion now. So there is growth, but growth could be interpreted in many ways. I know that there is a school of thought that says that, yes, you can have growth. You may not necessarily have job creation, right? But you can have growth. And we certainly have had growth in Grenada, in my view. I mean, you could feel it. You just have to look around and see the prosperity that's going on. That prosperity is as a result of growth.
Well, let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning.
Good morning to you and Mr. Joseph. He just mentioned that prosperity is a result of growth. However, I'm sure that as a professional in the financial area, he's well aware of the fact that we can have growth, and during that, one of the characteristics of growth could be that a larger percent of resources are in the hands of a small group of people who are sometimes referred to as the elite or the upper class. And I don't know if he thinks that this is the case in Grenada. Second question for him. Although the political systems of Grenada and the rest of the Caribbean and Cuba are different, is there anything, in his opinion, that we can learn from the fact that the Cubans have survived in spite of great economic pressure from the United States of America? And thirdly, I don't know if he has any ideas about stopping the brain drain that we experience, and I'll give a few examples. A lot of Haitians who are very well educated are driving taxis in Quebec, French-speaking Canada. 82% of Jamaican medical doctors are found working abroad. In Guyana, over 70% of all university-educated students are outside Guyana, some in the Caribbean, of course. And hospitals in America and in Canada, recently here we heard about a case in Northern Ireland and in England, have been absorbing a large percent of our nurses. And it's nurses from the Cuba who, in some cases, help to keep the existing health systems going. Sorry I put so many questions to him, but I'll be glad if you could answer one or two or all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Well, what I could say to the caller is, I am not in a position to compare the Cuban system with what happens in the rest of the Caribbean. I, being a British trained person, and someone who subscribed to the free market system, have not given thought, too much, because as far as I'm concerned, it has no impact on me. I have not bothered to think too much about what happens in Cuba and the Soviet Union and those kind of places. I am a free market man, and that's what I like. Yes, the brain drain, we all understand it. There are clearly reasons for it. We are very small economies, and they say because we don't have the diversification, people will prefer to be in a location where there is much more diversity. So West Indians traditionally have traveled to North America and Europe because of the opportunities there, right? But sometimes it's being done, to the detriment of the countries that they have left behind. Because in a number of instances, the same people who have migrated, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with migrating. In fact, I believe it's a good thing to migrate. But some of them, if they had remained, they can develop their country far more and probably do as well, right? And if I could give you an example of my own case, I have a friend and we're both in the same business, and he's in the United States and I'm here. And we compare notes from time to time, and we do all sorts of things. And he's not much better off than I am, right? So you don't necessarily have to migrate, right? You can stay and build your country, and I subscribe to that. He did ask me one other question, which I remember now.
The one about Cuba? The one about Cuba, what Cuba has been doing in...
I did say that,
okay.
I don't know too much about Cuba.
Yeah, that's the two I noted, Cuba and brain drain. Yeah. As we wrap up this morning, Mr. Joseph, going forward, what should be the plan of not just government, but local businesses to rejuvenate their revenue, the economy, in the near future? We're talking between now and August.
Well, every business should have a medium-term plan and a long-term plan. So you ask between now and August. Very little can happen between now and August. They will have to continue to do as they have been doing, just to make sure that they get enough supply from outside, because we have to ensure that the food chain does not disintegrate, as it were, right? We import a lot of things from some of our Caribbean neighbors and, of course, from the United States, right? In the United States, for example, the agricultural sector, they are forced to dump things, right? Simply because the majority of restaurants that they supply are no longer operational at this point in time. So we have to be, conscious of that fact. All the borders in the Caribbean at the moment are closed. So the things we used to get from Trinidad may not be available for a while, right? So our business sector who does importation from these places would have to carefully consider where their supplies are going to come from. Otherwise, between now and August, as I say, the food chain and the supply chain is going to be affected considerably. But I believe, everyone wants to ensure that they have enough supplies, that they are able to sell, and that kind of things. So we should be good for a while. I think we should be good for a while.
Thank you very much. Any final thoughts?
Well, except to say that all is not lost, right? Notwithstanding the fact that it's going to be difficult, but where there is life, there is a way. So I am sure, people should not be too despondent. I know it's going to be difficult, but that's all part of life.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph, for shedding some light and breaking down for us some of the things that we were not too clear on. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very welcome indeed. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Stay safe. That was a chartered accountant, Henry Joseph, breaking down for us some of the information in the Prime Minister's address, which was broadcast last night. We thank him very much. Thank you for viewing and listening to the program. Thank you for tuning in across the various platforms. Appreciate it as always. That's the end of my time today. I'll be back with you bright and early tomorrow, God willing. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. All days are business days. And just a reminder, not all businesses are opened. Only those that have been highlighted by the Prime Minister in previous regulations, as well as the new businesses that were opened, that he announced opened yesterday. So not all businesses. If you need to verify, just check the regulations. They're across various mediums and platforms that you can verify which businesses are operating. Joseph is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Have yourselves a productive, marvelous Monday.